Hello, my friends, and welcome to 7 True Tales of Attempted Murder via Thought Catalog. What makes a person capable of murder? Truly, only serial killers are the type to murder people. Because after all, no one close to us could possibly do something like that. Right? Wrong. Here's 7 true stories from survivors of attempted murder. Warning, the story list contains graphic descriptions, language, and adult themes and should be rated 16+. Thanks for understanding. I dated the quarterback in high school. My parents hated him, but their hatred fueled me to overlook red flags and really push to make things work, to prove them wrong. I was 17. Anyway, flash forward to 19 and I'm still dating the douche. Had been pushed around, had bruises left on me. Lots of little things happened, but I never told anyone. He was always terribly sorry and made it out to be my fault. I was young and he totally manipulated me because he had a weird hold over me since he took my virginity. I was going to college and living in my own house alone. I had never experienced life outside my crazy small town, and something in me snapped after a day of abuse. I was finally done. It was late November, and he had just purchased me a Christmas tree. When I called to finally break up with him, he was angry and told me he wanted his Christmas tree. Fine. I left it on my front porch and went to a friend's house. I had a really terrible feeling that I needed to not be home. I started getting a plethora of phone calls and texts from him. They started off begging me to talk. Then, when I didn't respond, he left me voicemails telling me his mother had a heart attack and he needed me. We lived a couple hours from our hometown, and he started timing his calls with what town he'd be in if he were actually driving. I'm not anywhere near you. I just passed name of town, and I'm so scared about my mom. Please call me. Then 15 minutes later, when he'd be passing another town, I'd get the same call. He kept saying he wasn't anywhere near me. I ended up turning off my phone and staying at my friend's house until about 3 a.m. When I got home, I was careful to drive around and make sure his car wasn't around. I ran inside and got a call on my landline asking where have I been. It was the absolute coldest I've ever heard his voice. I told him not to call me and I hung up. 2 seconds later, my door flew open and I was thrown against my counter. He was screaming, asking where I had been, who I was with, why I was ignoring him. I started begging him to call down. I reached for my cell phone and he broke it in half and ripped my landline out the wall. The rest is basically a blur. He trashed my apartment. At one point, I made it outside. Neighbors 2 doors away saw him grab my hair and drag me inside. They did nothing. He grabbed a knife he'd brought and held it against my neck, then told me that's not how he wanted me to go. He grabbed my face and shoved it into the couch, suffocating me. This encounter was nearing 2 hours long at this point, and I couldn't get loose and started losing consciousness. Something snapped and he just snapped out of it. He let go and he did a total 180. He started bawling and apologizing. He hugged me and begged me to forgive him. I told him I forgave him, but he needed to go so I could rest. I told him whatever I needed to get him out of my house. I immediately plugged in my landline and called 911. He started knocking on the door, crying and apologizing. I said that I just called the police and he screamed, "You fucking bitch," and left. He pled down to false imprisonment and was only given a little community service. I had a restraining order for a while. The second it was up, he called and asked me to be a team player and help him get the charges expunged. Nope. Fuck off. About 10 years ago, when I was 16, my brother, who at the time was 21, moved back into my parents' home due to various drug-related issues. At the time, that was about the extent of my knowledge of the situation, but I'd later learned that my older brother was acting as a small-time dealer and had gotten into some trouble with some sort of gang by not moving product fast enough. He also happened to be a user of various drugs, including meth. Again, at the time, all I knew was drug issues. But to be fair, when he moved back into my parents' place, he quit using everything with the exception of pot. However, the usage of drugs does in fact mess with your brain, and there are effects that can linger. I guess what I'm getting at is my brother's mental health wasn't exactly in outstanding condition. On this particular day, my brother came home from working a job and was behaving a bit strange. It's hard to recall all the details, but the one thing that comes to mind is him slamming a pot of water onto the stove, throwing in some noodles, turning on the wrong burner, and walking away. It was almost like he was sleepwalking, but at the same time I knew he wasn't. Being the passive and timid person that I am, I sort of just let him do his thing, and then I corrected the pot burner issue and went back to playing on the computer. A few minutes later, I was interrupted when my brother attempted to rip the computer out of the wall and, I presume, attempt to smash it. I physically stopped him, and an argument of sorts followed. Apparently, the computer was evil and was corrupting me. I, an introverted 16-year-old gamer, did not like the accusation that fell along similar lines that I've been hearing for years by certain groups of people, especially from the brother who was formerly a gamer, and had so drastically changed from the person I had known and respected from just a few years prior. He began throwing many things at me, including chairs, dishes, etc., and proceeded to tackle me while I was occupied with the chair he had most recently thrown. He then attempted to strangle me while muttering something about purging evil. That was the point I felt he was actually trying to kill me, and I decided I needed to physically harm him to make him stop. So I tossed him off me, and I gave him several punches as hard as I could to the midsection. He disengaged and ran outside into the woods out of sight. I called my father, who came home and found my brother trying to hang himself in the woods. We presume given by the belt in the tree. But he was barely coherent or conscious. He was taken to the ER. Turns out my brother was severely dehydrated, and coupled with his other mental health issues, this caused some sort of psychotic breakdown of sorts. I should end this by saying we're both perfectly fine now and leading happy, productive lives. My older brother abused me for pretty much my entire life. Broken bones, chemical burns from supergluing my eyes shut while I was sleeping, regular burns, strangling, anything. The one instance that really sticks out to me the most is when we were roughly 13 and 15. He was angry because I was watching a show and didn't want to give up the TV for him. He started punching me anywhere his fist could land. I tried to escape into our room, and he slammed the door until it cracked, and he could get in. He chased me through the house and managed to grab me by the hair and throw me over the banister. We had half a wall separating the stairwell from upstairs, and I free fell an entire level downstairs. When I stood back up, he was standing at the top with a chef's knife in hand. At that point, I freaked out and tried to escape through the French doors in my sister's room, but he made it outside just as I opened the door. So I ran back upstairs with him right behind me. I made it to the kitchen. We had one of those counters that wrap around and then sticks out in one spot, like an attached island. That was separating us while I tried to call my mom, but he sliced the cord. I threw the receiver at his face as hard as I could and ran past him while he was holding his head. I made it down the street before I noticed he wasn't following me anymore. When I threw the phone, I apparently shattered his front teeth, and that's excruciating when your nerves are dangling and exposed. I called my mom and told her what happened. She told me to go back home, and she'd talk to him when she got home from work. Fat chance. I walked to my friend's house across the highway and stayed there until my dad dragged me home. A man jumped me and pummeled me on a beach in Barbados in an attempted rape. When I attacked him in defense, he tried to kill me and started strangling me. I dug my shoulders into the sand to relieve pressure and not black out. I managed to squeeze my knee between us to separate his torso from mine. He then arched his back, bringing his face closer to mine, and I grabbed onto it with my teeth and I bit hard, ripping parts of his tongue off while he screamed. That got him off me and running. I felt high and happy after the fact, but my boyfriend, who was running down to help me, cried for hours. The real horror came after the hospital visit and the next day, reporting it to the constable. Barbados police don't care about rape, and in their society, it's all victim blaming. Nothing was computerized, and I had to write down 3 copies of the incident to get it reported. My only consolation is that tongues don't grow back, and that mofo will remember me forever. When I was 17, I had a 22-year-old boyfriend who I dated near the time I finished my secondary school education. He was genuinely amazing, and I thought he was perfect, as every naive young girl does. My friends warned me, saying he was manipulative and abusive, but I brushed that off, assuming they were just jealous. Though I started noticing things, and when I wouldn't give him his way, we would start to fight more and more. One night, we were relaxing and watching my favorite movie in my room, and my boyfriend starts trying to pressure me into giving him oral sex. I tried pulling away, but he was holding my hand down into his lap, and that's when I started shouting and screaming. He grabbed my neck and threw me to the floor and began kicking me. At this point, I was completely dazed and in shock, so I couldn't defend myself. After what seemed like ages, I finally screamed, "Stop!" He grabbed my hair and dragged me to the balcony, where he tried shoving me over the guardrail. I was fighting, but I'm also very small, so I don't have much strength. Suddenly, something grabs me, and at the same time I see my boyfriend fly headfirst over the rails. Turns out my neighbor got home early and noticed the situation unfold. He ran through, broke the front door, and ran upstairs to my room, then tossed my boyfriend over the rails and grabbed me to stop me from falling. Police and ambulance were called. Boyfriend was taken to hospital and charged with assault and attempted homicide. Luckily, my family has cameras on the balconies and porch to catch thieves, so they caught almost everything that occurred. My neighbor didn't get charged as he acted in my defense. That was about 3 years ago. The neighbor and I are still close friends, and my ex-boyfriend is still in prison. My cousin tried to drown me a few years ago. We'd been on bad terms for years. She beat me up constantly when we were kids, and she sabotaged my work a few times in high school. I never fought back because I thought she was absolutely crazy. I figured she was, special. About 3 years ago, I dated a guy she was interested in. I didn't know she was into him, and that apparently was the final straw, as she put it. So she decided to kill me by dragging me into the pool in her backyard and holding me underwater until I blacked out. She's easily twice my size and weight, so it was the easiest way for her. She could just blame my death on drowning by accident. Anyway, she successfully held me underwater until I stopped breathing, then got out of the pool and sat in the deck chair to watch the show. My friend found me and genuinely thought I was dead. He dragged me out of the water and did CPR. That was what possibly saved my life. If you're wondering where psychopath cousin was for that whole ordeal, she was sitting there in her pink flamingo chair, smiling like Norman Bates. Charges were pressed, and insanity was pled, which was probably accurate anyways. I do not talk to that side of that family much anymore. I was stabbed in the stomach during a bar fight, and I passed out from blood loss. When I came to, I was in the hospital. The surgeon who passed me up let me know that if I had not been stabbed, I could have died from my appendix bursting. Apparently, without realizing it, my appendix was perforated and not related at all to the stab wound. What I thought was just some cramps was actually a life-threatening time bomb, and thanks to being almost stabbed to death, I got to live. If you have a personal story you'd like to share with me to narrate, write it in the comments below or email me at ximoristar@gmail.com. That's all the time I have for today, my friends. I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening. I'm Imori. Now, listen to the spooky tunes.